Welcome to Binging on Britain. I'm Katie and I'll be your hostess as we gorge on bits of British history. Let's dig in. Question number 1. What is the largest henge in Britain? Martin Henge in Wiltshire is the largest Neolithic henge in the UK. Its earthen banks and ditches encircle 35 to 40 acres. That's roughly the size of 20 soccer pitches put together. Martin Henge is part of the Stonehenge landscape, which includes several other monuments, but it didn't fare as well as its more oft-noted neighbor. The henge at Martin has faced millennia of destruction via plowing and farming, building projects, and other human interference, and sadly none of her standing stones survive to this day. The prize for the largest, still standing stone circle is Martin's other companion, Avebury. This henge encompasses 28.5 acres, and despite some human attempts at destruction, many of the stones still stand. It appears that in the early 14th century, the very Christian population of Avebury believed their henge to be a symbol of the devil, so they set about burying the stones. They would pre-dig pits and then pull the stones into the hole. While this was occurring, a traveling barber surgeon came to the village and joined in. For his trouble, a stone fell on him, fracturing his femur and breaking his neck. Without a way to remove the stone, the man's body lay underneath it for 600 years until it was discovered in 1938. The stone that killed him has since been re-erected. Question number 2. How old was Mary when she became the Queen of Scots? The only legitimate child of King James V to survive infancy began her reign as a newborn baby. Mary was 6 days old when her father, who had been on campaign against the English before falling ill, passed away, leaving the very young princess as his country's ruler. Of course, Mary was too young to do much of anything besides eat, sleep, and cry, much less run a nation. A regency was required, and the first to fill that role was the heir presumptive James Hamilton, Earl of Arran, followed by Mary's French mother, Marie de Guise. At the age of 5, Mary was sent to the French court to be raised by her future mother-in-law, Catherine de' Medici, in order to keep her safe. Mary would return to Scotland to claim her throne in 1561, following the deaths of her mother and her husband, King Francis II of France. Mary's tender age at her father's death sets her apart as the youngest British monarch to accede the throne. Question number 3. How did people build Stonehenge? I feel like the standing stones are pretty straightforward, right? They dug a pit, pulled the bottom of the stone into the pit, and then pulled on it until it was upright, then filled in the hole, similar to how we would put up a fence post if it weighed 25 tons. The part that blows the mind are the lintels, am I right? The stones that cross the top of the standing stones seem to have been placed there so perfectly that it's hard to imagine how it could have been done without a crane to hoist them into place. Without heavy machinery, this engineering problem was pretty weighty. In my opinion, the most likely method is the teeter-totter wedge method. This involves using a wedge to slightly lift one side of the lintel up, which allows a piece of timber or some other placeholder to slide underneath, and then the same is done on the other side, creating a teeter-totter effect as each side is slowly lifted back and forth until the lintel is high enough to pull onto the standing stones, where they were secured with mortise and tenon joints, very similar to Legos. Question number 4. What is the saddest archaeological discovery you've heard of? History Cold Case is an amazing show. Their use of multiple disciplines to tell the stories of archaeological remains is fascinating. But one particular episode hit me right in the feels. Season 2, Episode 4 tells the story of a woman found buried with 3 neonates. They discovered over the course of the show that the very short woman from the early Roman period had been pregnant with triplets who reached roughly full term, measuring right at 40 weeks. The woman was under 5 feet tall, so you can imagine how big she must have gotten, and probably had no idea why. Maybe she considered the possibility of 2 babies, but 3 would have been inconceivable. After going into labor, the woman successfully delivered the first infant, although we don't know if that baby was alive or stillborn. As baby B began descending, it was likely in a non-optimal position and was unable to right itself before becoming stuck. At this time, there were midwives, but we don't know how advanced they were, and this woman needed a C-section stat. Unable to push the baby out, both mother and child died. Baby C also died, still high in his or her mom's uterus. I think the thing that is most sad about this case is that third baby. No one ever knew it existed. This child lived in its mother's womb, died there, and was buried. It wasn't until 1989, when the grave was excavated, that anyone knew that precious little baby existed. Question number 5. How many bog bodies have been found in England, Scotland, and Ireland? England has 6. 2 have been discovered in Scotland, while Ireland has 17. Bog bodies are typically from Iron Age Celtic communities and are often believed to have been sacrificed. They have noticeably violent injuries, and bogs were believed to be places where this world and the other world were connected. As a portal to the underworld, the bog was a perfect place to send these human gifts to the gods. And from a modern scientific standpoint, they are also a great place to preserve bodies. Question number 6. What food did Jane Seymour crave during her pregnancy? Most women will tell you they had specific cravings during pregnancy. I know I did. And queens go through the same pregnancy issues us plebs do. Jane Seymour, Henry VIII's third wife, reportedly craved quail during her pregnancy, and Henry so eagerly sought to satiate his wife's pregnant palate that he had quail brought across the channel from France and Flanders. Question number 7. What Viking are all British monarchs descended from? Rollo was a Norseman who laid siege to Chartres, forcing Charles the Simple, king of West Francia, to cede Normandy to him. He begat sons who, well, we all know how that goes. Anyway, Rollo is the 3 times great-grandfather of William the Conqueror, and while not descended in the male line since Henry I, every monarch since William the Conqueror is descended from the Viking Rollo. Rollos sound good. Snack time. Question number 8. What English tax caused a revolt and rioting 600 years apart? A poll tax was first levied in England in 1377, requiring that for every man and woman over the age of 14, a payment of 1 groat, equitable to 4 pence, was due to the crown. This was used to help fund the 100 Years' War and was significantly unpopular. In 1379, the tax was adjusted to become graduated, with those at higher ranks paying higher amounts, making the system ostensibly more fair. In 1381, the tax was again reformed to a blended tax, meaning that some of the poor were allowed to pay the lower rate, while others who were also destitute had to pay the full amount of 3 groats, or about 1 shilling. This, among other issues, led to the Peasants' Revolt in 1381. In 1987 and 88, Parliament passed legislation creating a new poll tax in Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government. This went into effect in 1990, and England and Wales and the intense disdain for the new tax being levied caused rioting to break out. The largest at Trafalgar Square, where somewhere between 70 and 200,000 people gathered to demonstrate against the new tax. The demonstration saw 113 citizens and 100 police officers injured, as well as 340 people arrested. This short-lived iteration of the poll tax was replaced with the council tax beginning in 1993-94. Question number 9. Did women receive child support if they weren't married? From the late 1530s, if a woman delivered an illegitimate child and the father was known, the parish where the mother and child resided would require what was known as a bastardy bond from the putative father. Many fathers, being unable to secure the bond themselves, would require friends or family as surety. The bond was to provide for the mother and child, alleviating the parish's responsibility to them. If a putative father had the means, he could forego the bastardy bond and pay the maintenance in a lump sum. Additionally, the father could marry the mother and legitimize their children. Often fathers from the upper classes who acknowledged their illegitimate children actually had custody of them from the age of about 7. Upper-class mothers of illegitimate children could be quickly married off, often to someone other than their child's father, and with significant benefits for the groom, sent to a convent, or have their children forcibly removed from their care. Sometimes, if her lover were in a position to keep her, she may have been allowed to maintain her affair and raise her children. John of Gaunt and Catherine Swynford had 7 children together prior to their marriage, while Henry I gathered 5 children by his mistress Sybil Corbett and a further 19 children by other mistresses. Robert Dudley had and raised an illegitimate child with Lady Douglas Sheffield, who was allowed leave to see her child as she wished, while Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire, gave birth to the daughter of Charles Grey and was forced by her husband to relinquish her baby to Mr. Grey's parents, only seeing her during covert visits to the Grey home. Question number 10. Who was the youngest person ever executed in England? John Dean, aged 8 to 9, was convicted of arson at the Abington Assizes on February 23, 1629. Until the Children's Act of 1908, the age at which a child could be tried for a felony was age 7. Convictions for felonious actions came with an automatic death sentence, although these were routinely commuted for children and young teenagers. It seems that in the case of young John, the judge determined there to have been malice, revenge, and cunning, therefore opting not to allow the child a reprieve. He came to the gallows before his 10th birthday, making him the youngest person to be executed in England. Thanks for joining me for Season 1's penultimate episode. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it wherever you listen. If you'd like to help support Binging on Britain, you can do so by joining Podbean's Patron program or Patreon, as well as purchasing Binging on Britain merch. These links will be available in the description. Also, Time Team's first 3-part episode of their new series is available on the Time Team official YouTube channel. Most excitingly, next Sunday, March 27th at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I will be hosting Binging on Britain's live Season 1 finale. Please be sure to tune in on the Podbean app or at the link in the description for a fun episode, Q&A time, and a chance to win some swag. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.